Hello, everybody. And by everybody, I mean one other person other than me. How are we doing today? We are back with another stream. It has been actually a good little bit. That's on me. Week 3, I had like 4 tests. I know. Terrible excuse. Week 3, I had four tests, and then there was a hurricane last week. But we're back. The sun is shining. We got some good lighting, natural lighting coming in through here, so there's no rain to be seen. It's great. But I'd like to say once again, hello to everybody. And if you're watching this later down the line, welcome. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to watch me talk about football and make some terrible predictions. I had a feeling it was you. I noticed that somebody had liked the stream before it even had any views. You did. But it's okay. I would have been stranded if I didn't. Not as stranded as some other people. Let's put it that way. But all right, cool. We got 4 people in here now. What's up, everybody? How's it going? But yeah, we're just in here. Well, first of all, I hope everybody's having a good day. But yeah, we're just gonna do some predictions and we're gonna reveal my power rankings before Thursday Night Football. We got the Bucks and Falcons tonight. That should be a really good matchup. Both teams are above average. I would say. I think the Bucks are probably a little bit better team than the Falcons. No offense to any Falcons fans out there. I know some of you might be, but it's besides the point. Anyways, we can just get into my very shitty power rankings because I'll be honest. As per usual, I couldn't really I was bouncing between a lot of things and I was running out of time. So I just needed to get something down. So without further ado, we'll reveal my 21st through 32nd pick or rankings right here. First of all, okay, so new last place. Give it up for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the last winless team in the league. Congratulations to the Jacksonville Jaguars for currently sitting at number 32 in the power rankings. And look, man, I predicted this team to go to the playoffs preseason. Yeah, it's not a good look for me so far. I feel like each year I'll have one team that I predict to go to the playoffs that will just absolutely shit the bed. Trevor Lawrence has not looked that great. He actually had a better week last week. Hopefully this going forward in this upcoming week, they look, a little bit better. But yeah, real quick, I'm going to flex on the gram that I'm live because I forgot to do that. So everybody knows. All right, smile, everybody. See, you guys get to be in my story. How exciting is that? But anywho, yeah. So 32nd, Jacksonville Jaguars, winless team, understandable. 31st, I have the Miami Dolphins. I don't actually know if this is a hot take or not. I mean, they were like a borderline top 10 team for me to start the season as well. And they have completely shit the bed for obvious reasons, though. Tua Tagovailoa is out with a concussion. When it looks like he might come back, which a lot of people will say isn't the smart move for him considering how many concussions he's had, but he still may come back. So we might see the Miami Dolphins improve at least a little bit. But for now, they have just looked awful, man. They lost 31-12 against the Tennessee Titans, the former last place team in my power rankings. But yeah, 30th, I have the New England Patriots. Shouldn't be any shock there. I actually don't have the Patriots listed as the worst team in the AFC East. That is now the Miami Dolphins. But the Patriots have looked like absolute dog shit right after week 2. They had a good game against the Seahawks week 2. They beat the Cincinnati Bengals on the road in week 1, and ever since have just completely fallen off the map. The Patriots have just looked awful. The offensive line is awful. Defense might be all right, but the offense, again, is just in shambles, it looks like. But anywho, moving on to 29th, the Cleveland Browns. Again, a team that we thought were going to be playoff contenders headed into the season. And, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they still can be. It's early in the season. I mean, at least one of these teams on the screen right now are probably going to make the playoffs. That's just the reality of it. Things change so much throughout this league, throughout the year. So it's bound to happen. But for now, the Cleveland Browns are playing like one of the worst teams in football. The Raiders just lost to the Panthers 2 weeks ago. Everyone's like, oh, wow, look how bad the Raiders are. And then the Raiders go on and beat the Cleveland Browns, which a lot of people did expect to happen, but that just goes to show that nobody believes in Deshaun Watson. He's completely lost the locker room for understandable reasons. I mean, he's got another sexual assault case to add to his resume, and I think the team's just done. However, good news for the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb is practicing this week, so they get a little bit more firepower with them as the year goes on. So we can expect to see this rank, the Cleveland Browns climb a little bit. They haven't had, I mean, no, they haven't really had a hard, I wouldn't say a necessarily hard schedule either, but look, they're 1-3. What can you say? 28th, the Tennessee Titans. You know, honestly, I think Mason Rudolph is the way to go. The Will Levis era in Tennessee has not been good, although he has provided plenty of context for memes. Like it's every week with this dude. We all know he has that fucking mayonnaise commercial now because he motherfucker puts it in his coffee. Yeah, just imagine that, mayonnaise in your coffee. I'm not trying that. But yeah. They actually look decent. They had a convincing win against the Miami Dolphins on the road. And yes, that's the Tyler Huntley-led Miami Dolphins team, which isn't that good. But still, there was a convincing win for them. So, look, let's not get carried away here. They're still ranked 28th, nothing too crazy. But anyways, moving on to 27th, we have the Raiders, one of the more confusing teams in the league. I was really high on them at the beginning of the season, thinking that they could potentially be a playoff team. And they still can be potentially a playoff team. If I'm correct, too, they might currently be sitting inside of the playoff picture. I think that is a real thing. Let me look this up real quick. Okay, no. They currently sit at the 9th seed, but I think last week they were sitting there at 7th, which was insane to think about, especially after losing to the Carolina Panthers, who I have right in front of them. Again, the Panthers with Andy Dalton are a better team than the Panthers with Bryce Young. That's just the reality of it. However, they're still not very good. So there's not much else to need to say here. One thing that's interesting to point out, though, however, is in recent years, the AFC has, in my opinion, been dominating the NFC. Like, the AFC has been way better than the NFC. And as you can see, the Panthers are my worst ranked team in the NFC. There are 6 teams below them. So I'm saying that the worst NFC team is better than the 11th ranked AFC team, which is a little bit interesting to think about, but it's there. 25th, the New York Giants. You know, you got to give them credit. They lost that game against the Cowboys Thursday night. They just kicked 5 field goals. If they get that red zone percentage up, this team should have probably won that game. And their offensive line is night and day from what it was last year. And that is proving to be the cornerstone of why this team is slightly improved from last season, despite losing 2 huge stars, both on the offense and defense, in Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. Dexter Lawrence is still playing phenomenally. The secondary of the New York Giants looks terrible, which is not helping, especially in that game. They had so many hard-fought drives, and then the Cowboys would score on, like, one play, man. Like, maybe not one play, but they'd be at midfield, and then CeeDee Lamb would do his thing, or Brandon Cooks would do his thing. And the Cowboys, like, this season so far, just haven't been that good. So it's not like you can say, oh, the Cowboys are really good. No, you can't. But nonetheless, the Giants have impressed me so far this season. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they could definitely win more than 6 games. We'll just have to look at their schedule down the line. Moving on to 24th, I have the Los Angeles Rams. They just lost to the team above them, the Chicago Bears. Look, the Rams are a banged-up team. It sucks, but let's not forget they did still beat the 49ers. And they could have very easily beaten the Detroit Lions. So I think a healthy Rams team is going to be really good, but a Rams team without Cooper Kupp, without Puka Nacua is just, and starters on their entirety of their offensive line and their defense. I think it sucks, man. It sucks. But for right now, the Rams are a bottom tier team in the league. It sucks. 23rd, the Chicago Bears, the team I had a lot of hope for. Let's chillax a little bit. I didn't want them to be that good because they're an NFC North rival of the Detroit Lions, but I did think they were going to be a lot better than what we've been used to seeing, and so far they haven't shown that. Now, Caleb Williams, these last 2 weeks, has looked insanely better. He's starting to look like a valid starting quarterback in the NFL. Granted, the teams they played were the Los Angeles Rams and the Indianapolis Colts, two teams which I think are but I don't know what that noise was. I think they're but they're not anything special. So, yeah, I think the 23rd for the Bears is fair. I think it's fair. 22nd, the Cincinnati Bengals, another incredibly confusing team in the league because we still go back to that Super Bowl run they had a few years back with Joe Burrow, and we're still waiting for them to return to that form. We're still waiting for the Bengals to get back to, what we expect them to be. And they have a chance to this week. They play the Baltimore Ravens division rival. If they can win that game, I think they can turn this whole season around. But they started off 0-3, got their first win against the Carolina Panthers, which again is not that impressive of a win. So I'm keeping them at 22nd until they can prove that they can do more. Now moving on to 21st, this might be a little bit controversial. I have the New York Jets. And look, Bo Nix had -7 passing yards in the first half. He had ended the game with 60 passing yards. And they lost. The Jets lost. Now I get it. It was raining. There was all these other factors that went into it. But holy shit. Like, you have Aaron Rodgers. Breece Hall didn't do anything. Now maybe the Broncos defense, let's give credit to the Broncos defense. Maybe they're just really good. And we have not realized that yet because they got 70 dropped on them last season. But who knows? But for now, Jets at 21st. Moving on. 20th, I have the Denver Broncos, the team I thought would be one of the worst teams in the league headed into the season. I had them getting like 3 or 4 wins, and they're already halfway there. Over halfway there. They have 2 wins. They're 500, 2-2. Great win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have no idea where that came from. And then a good win against the New York Jets on the road. So this team might prove to be better than we thought. Courtland Sutton's looking great. The defense is looking fantastic. Bo Nix, if he just keeps improving, this team will be pretty decent. I'll give them that. They will be decent. Moving on to 19th, another confusing team in the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, listen, the Colts, they lost to the Malik Willis-led Packers, which turned out not to be that bad of a loss, I guess. They barely lost to the Texans week 1, and then they go on and beat the Chicago Bears and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, the first loss of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just confusing. Like if someone wanted to put them at like 13th, I would understand. But if they wanted to put them lower than 19th, I can also understand. I still need to see more from the Colts. 18th, the Arizona Cardinals. People are tanking this team after their embarrassing home loss against the Washington Commanders, which is okay, fair enough, but I don't know, man. I just have this gut feeling that the Cardinals are still going to be sneaky good. I mean, they had that close week 1 game against the Buffalo Bills. They had a close game against the Lions, and they absolutely destroyed the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah, they're banged up and injured, but I still think there's a lot of potential in this offense, and I think as long as they keep improving throughout the season, they'll be fine. This is a team I could see making the playoffs down the line, but we'll have to see. They got a matchup with the 49ers this week. A lot to prove there. If they can somehow win that game, this table's turning, bro. This table's turning, I guess. 17th, the Los Angeles Chargers. After starting 2-0, they have just dropped their last 2 games against good teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing to be ashamed of there. Justin Herbert has been a little bit banged up. I think once he gets healthy, this team will be fine. But for now, I have them as a mid team. Same thing with the Dallas Cowboys. I think they had a rough couple of weeks following their week 1 victory against the Cleveland Browns. Then they go on the road, get a hard-fought win against the New York Giants. I think, I don't know. People like to hate on the Cowboys this season, and rightfully so. But I think they still got potential to, they're obviously still a playoff contender in my eyes. I think they have the ability to go to the playoffs. I think the defense is still solid. Their offense is still solid. But again, you drop 40-plus points to the New Orleans Saints at home. That's a little bit embarrassing. Saints a half above them. They lost to the Eagles, which is proving to be less of a impressive loss, I guess is a way to put it. The Eagles are starting to fall off a little bit. And who else did they lose to? The Atlanta Falcons. They barely lost to the Falcons. Look, I'm going to be real. The only reason why they aren't above the Falcons is because they just lost to them. I'm doing that for my Falcons fans because I know they'll blow a fuse if I put the Saints above the Falcons. But I do think the Saints are probably a better team than the Atlanta Falcons. But hey, the Atlanta Falcons, in reality, they lost to the Steelers. Yeah, they could have beaten the Chiefs, and then they would have been 3-1. So it's a confusing team, man. It's a confusing team. I do think they are above average team in the league. They also have potential to go to the playoffs. And they have the potential to give big teams trouble. Moving on to 13th, the Seattle Seahawks just lost big on the road against the Detroit Lions for the first time since 2012. We finally beat those motherfuckers. Finally, man. That took forever, but it felt so good. But we're not talking about the Lions right now. We're talking about the Seahawks. I still think the Seahawks are a good team. I went to that game thinking that the Seahawks were frauds. I'm not going to lie. They are 3-0. They barely beat the Broncos, the Patriots, and then they destroyed the tool-less Skylar Thompson-led Miami Dolphins team. Like, I didn't actually think they would be that good. But Geno Smith right now is the leader in passing yards. And I know the Lions' defense is probably not that good as I originally thought. But either way, this Seahawks offense, like Kenneth Walker, he's a dog. Zach Charbonnet, he's a dog. They got so many good receivers on this team too, like DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba is coming out of his shell more and more. And Tyler Lockett's still a good option. There's plenty of offensive weapons on the Seattle team, and their offensive line, they have more depth than meets the eye. And Geno, despite his age, can still move around. And they got some of the best defensive backs in the league. So yes, the Seattle Seahawks, you can stay at 13th despite losing to the Detroit Lions. Moving on to 12th, and honestly, I had this team in the top 10, but I moved them out of them. Move it out of there because I don't want to be like too ambitious, I guess. But the Washington Commanders of all teams, a team that has looked awful the last couple of seasons, are looking pretty good. They're looking pretty good. They have finally found their guy in Jaden Daniels. Dan Quinn's cooking in Washington, although I know my Falcons fans, they're a little bit wary of that. They're like, all right, don't underestimate his ability to blow it. But 12th, I have the Washington Commanders. I should have put them in the top 10, but I'm teetering around this too much, I guess. But hey, we'll see what happens going forward. Moving on to 11th, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got their first loss of the season on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. They lost by a field goal to Joe Flacco. I don't think that's that crazy of a loss. Yeah, I know they could have won that game, and if they were, say, a top 10 team, they would have won that game, but it's an understandable loss. Like, they barely lost on the road. Don't hit the panic button too quickly on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think they're as good as people or their fans want to acknowledge, but I think they still are a very decent team. Obviously, because I have them ranked 11th. Anyways, moving on to my top 10 at number 10. This is probably a little bit low for a lot of people, but at 10th, I have the Houston Texans. That's their alternate logo that they're wearing this week. I think it's beautiful. I put it in my power rankings visual. But they are 10th. They almost lost to my 32nd ranked team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I got this close to calling it, but the fucking Jaguars blew that shit at the end. Man, that was actually a really good game, but I don't see, like, you can't almost lose to the Jaguars and be a top 5 team, right? I don't know. One of my top 5 teams has a bad loss, but that's besides the point. But they haven't been that impressive this season. I'm not gonna say I'm a hater, but I'm optimistic about the Houston Texans. Like, hold on, like, they're good. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not gonna put them, higher than this if they don't deserve it. Moving on to 9th, I have the Green Bay Packers. That was a disaster first half in that game. A lot like Georgia, Alabama, actually. And then they came back towards the end, but just couldn't pull it through, losing 31-29 against the Minnesota Vikings, who turned out to be a really good team. Jordan Love still has not gotten his first win of the season, which is interesting, but I'm not going to lie and say that the Packers aren't a top 10 team. They are still a top 10 team. But moving on to my top 8 teams, this is going to get some heat. But I know everyone sees the elephant in the room, but 8th, I have the Eagles. I know people don't like the Eagles right now. They could be 0-4. They really could be, but they got a good win against the Saints and the Packers. That's why they're there. I know they had a bad loss against the Buccaneers, but that's who I have ranked third, surprisingly enough. And they lost to the Falcons, which I said before can give big teams some trouble. And they lost by 1 point. And if Saquon caught that ball, they would be 3-1. I'm not hitting the panic button on the Philadelphia Eagles just yet. I did pick them to go to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to do that anymore, but still, I'd still consider them a top 10 team. I don't want to drop them out of the top 10 quite yet. Although if they have another stinker in the next couple of weeks, they got a bye coming up, but if they have more stinkers in the next couple of weeks, yeah, we can expect them to drop. 7th, the San Francisco 49ers. They got back on track against, yes, a terrible New England Patriots team. Well, we still have a few more things to see from this team as they get more and more healthy. But, yeah, CMC probably going to be out longer than we anticipated. That sucks. But yeah, let's see them beat a decent team. They have a decent team in the Arizona Cardinals this week. Let's see how they perform against them. Moving on to 6th, the Buffalo Bills, my former number 1 team. What the hell happened? They lost 35-10 against the Baltimore Ravens. Who would have thought, honestly? Well, okay, I feel like a couple people, but that big of a margin after the Ravens lost to the Raiders. So I got to put the Ravens on top 5 for that, but for blowing out my former number 1 team. I mean, the Bills looked unstoppable before that week, and the Ravens just did everything they could to stop them, and it worked. Now, I feel like the Bills kind of shot themselves in the foot plenty of times, especially in that second half with that stupid-ass trick play, but that's besides the point. But anyways, Ravens are in the top 5. Welcome back to the top 5, Baltimore Ravens. I'm convinced you guys are still a good team because you could have beaten the Chiefs if Isaiah Likely's toe was in bounds, and that was a great win against the Buffalo Bills. So I got to give it to you. 4th, I had the Detroit Lions. Not too much movement from them. I mean, I thought they they played their best football last week, and as long as they keep improving, they're going to stay in the top 5. I don't care what anybody says. That was a great win on Monday night. Creativity back in the offense. The offense looked back, and the defense, it fell off a little bit, but that's besides the point. All right. Moving on to 3rd, Buccaneers. Yeah, they got blown out by the Broncos in week 3. Don't know. I can't tell you what happened there. I have no clue what happened in that game, but it's just besides the point. It's a bluff, you know, it's a what's the word? It's a fluke. Like, I don't know how that happened, but they did beat the Lions. They had a very convincing win against the Philadelphia Eagles. They had a very convincing win against the Washington Commanders, who are looking like they could be a top 10 team. So, Buccaneers, you lost against your easiest opponent, I guess. But I'm giving you guys the 3rd spot. They play tonight against the Falcons. We'll see how that stands. 2, I have not the Minnesota Vikings. I have the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the 2 remaining undefeated teams, but they have not looked like the best team in the league. Like, I can't, with a good conscience, put them at number 1. You know who has looked like the best team in the league? The Minnesota Vikings. I can't believe I'm saying this. I had them ranked under 20th headed into this season, but so far this season, they are blowing everybody out of the water. That was their closest game they had last week, and they still could have blown them out. They let the Packers back into that game, but holy shit, Sam Darnold looks good. The defense is amazing. Again, I'll say it again. I keep saying it. If Brian Flores doesn't have a job as a head coach next season, something's wrong, because he just turned what used to be a very sad Minnesota defense that was comparable to the Lions defense, and is now they're the best, or one of the best in the league. So kudos to the Minnesota Vikings, but they wholeheartedly deserve to be the number 1. I don't think I've ever ranked them number 1 before in any of my power rankings, but kudos to our future MVP, Sam Darnold, for that. Woo! Okay, that was a lot. Those were my power rankings headed into week 5. We will now get into my NFL weekly predictions, and I have an update here. Here's our pick'em results. Now, I will be honest, because I didn't stream the last 2 weeks, Holly and any family members in the chat, that I used our Pick'em League to get these results. So using those, I am up by 1 game. So we are neck and neck headed into the 5th week of the season. So you guys, I guess Holly and one other person, if no one else votes, I will just, fill it in with whatever the Pick'em results are again. But this is where we stand right now. Very, very close game. Or very, very close in the season. It's getting competitive. But anywho, we'll move on to my predictions. Here we go. So these are my predictions headed into Week 5, Thursday Night Football. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers head to Atlanta on the road to play the Atlanta Falcons. Should be a good game. Always seems like in the last couple of years, this game turns out to be really good. They split last season. I feel like the Bucs have, as of recently, been dominating this series. I think Baker Mayfield has looked better than Kirk Cousins. So I'm going to take the Buccaneers on the road in a very narrow victory against the Atlanta Falcons. Moving on to our first London game of the season, the New York Jets versus the Minnesota Vikings. I can see a world where this is the Vikings' first loss. I mean, after all, the Jets were the first loss of the Eagles last season, so they could end another winning streak in London, but I just don't see it happening. I think the way that the offense performed for the Jets last week against the Broncos was awful, and if they perform that way again against the Vikings defense, they're not going to do any better. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, the Vikings have looked phenomenal. So I think they're going to continue their unbeaten run right there. And if to anybody in the chat, I'll say this now, just because there's a delay, start putting your predictions in the chat, and I will keep track of them, and I will use those me versus my audience's pick 'em, I guess. Weekly pick-ems. But anyways, we got a barn burner here. Carolina Panthers at the Chicago Bears. I'm sure plenty of people are going to be watching this game. This was a Thursday Night Football game last year, which was who let that happen. But anyways, I got the Bears, again, getting a victory at home against the Panthers, bringing their record to 3-2, Panthers 1-4. This is going to be, I think, an actual good game. The Browns at the Commanders. I don't know why. I just have an odd feeling that the Browns might overperform this game. But I'm still giving it to the Commanders at home. I mean, they've looked phenomenal. The Browns have not looked phenomenal. 24-18 for the Commanders at home. Then we got this is the real barn burner. This is the game of the week right here. Number 31st ranked Miami Dolphins headed into 30th ranked New England Patriots. I got the Patriots getting a win for the first time in a while, I guess in 2 seasons, against the Miami Dolphins, 21-17. Then we have the Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars, my last ranked team. Look, man, the Jaguars have beaten the Colts in Jacksonville every single time since 2014. The Colts have not won in Jacksonville since 2014. That was 10 years ago. And that streak is going to continue because the Jaguars want their first win. And I'll tell you this much too, because the Lions don't play this week, and I know what I try to do is like punishments for if the Lions lose. So this is my deal. If the Jacksonville Jaguars lose on Sunday, I will drink Will Levis mayonnaise coffee. You've heard it here first. Look, the Colts have not beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2014. It's been 10 years since they've done that. I'm taking the Jags at home. They're going to be hungry for their first win of the season. Mark it down. The Jaguars will get their first win of the season at home against the Indianapolis Colts. And if they don't, I will drink Will Levis mayonnaise coffee. So there you go. And to those just coming in, those coming in, put your predictions for these matchups in the chat. Put them in there, and I will write them down and keep track of how our pick'em results are going. This is where we're at so far. Like I'm one up you guys by 1 pick. So only you can turn the tide if you just, you see this screen, just type what you think's going to happen in the chat if you want. You don't have to, obviously. No one's forcing you. Whew. But anyways, moving on to our next slate of games here. We got the Bills at the Texans. Should be a good matchup. I know I was talking all that shit about the Texans, but I like them on the road. I like them against Buffalo. I feel like in their sexy-ass uniforms, their new sexy-ass alternate logo, give me the Houston Texans at home against the Buffalo Bills. 21-18, narrow victory, but I think it's going to be interesting. Here we go. This is a game of the week, too. Both these games are really good. The Ravens at the Bengals is always a good game. And like I said before, this, like I said before, this is going to determine a lot of the Cincinnati Bengals season. We've seen it time and time again where the Bengals start the season off terrible. Like they're never 2-0. They're never 1-0. They always start off the season like this. They were 0-3 this year, got their first win against the Carolina Panthers. If anything's going to turn this season around, is a home divisional win against the Baltimore Ravens, the team that just destroyed the Buffalo Bills. This is a game that the Cincinnati Bengals need to win. They win this, they got momentum on their side. They are finally looking like the team that they are supposed to be. But if, on the other hand, if they lose this game, I don't think they make the playoffs. I don't. But what I do think is going to happen is I have the Ravens beating the Bengals on the road by a very slight margin, 23-22, very close score. That's what I got. Then we move on to the Raiders at the Broncos. The Broncos repping their throwback unis. And look, the Broncos, yep, they have looked a lot better this season. I'll give them credit. But the Raiders have not lost to the Broncos since 2019. In the 2020s, this decade, the Broncos have not had a win against the Raiders, and I don't think it's going to happen this season. Give me the Raiders on the road, 20-16 against the Broncos. Now, Cardinals and 49ers, again, should be a very great matchup. Very offensive heavy, as you see. I got 54 points being scored here. I got the 49ers winning this one 33-21. Cardinals, they might put up a fight, though. They'll probably put up a fight. Moving on to the Giants at the Seahawks. The Seahawks on the road. I think they are a better team than the New York Giants. I think they are probably going to torch that Giants defense, but I do expect the Giants to put up some sort of a fight on the road against Seattle. Give me the Seahawks 24-16. Now, Packers at the Los Angeles Rams. I feel like this is always a good game as well. The Rams are still a very banged up team. I got Jordan Love getting his first win of the season against the Los Angeles Rams. 26-24 on the road. I'm giving it to the Green Bay Packers. And then if we move on to our final two games, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, the Dallas Cowboys head into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And I guess this is an upset, but I got the Cowboys to get back on their feet against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is where part in the season where we start seeing the Steelers kind of lose a couple more of these games while the Cowboys are going to start winning games that they are supposed to be winning. Well, I guess they're not supposed to be winning this game, but I think they're going to be slightly better than what we have seen thus far this season. So 24-17 is what I got the score of this game being. Then we got the Saints and the Chiefs. Now, I talked all that shit about the Chiefs, how they haven't looked like the best team in the league despite being undefeated. I still got them staying undefeated. I think the Saints are starting to fall off, but it would not shock me in the slightest if the Saints win this game. Like I said plenty of times before, teams that are undefeated or teams that are winless are going to be teams that are winless are going to be hungry for their first win. Jaguars, teams that have the teams that are undefeated, they're bound to slip up at some point early on in the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints win this game, but I'm not confident enough in that pick to say that. So give me the Chiefs to continue to get business done against the Saints, 27-23. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my weekly predictions. Thank you to everybody that tuned in and started watching. Thank you for Holly for chatting. And I will see you all in the next one. Also, thanks. We just hit 400 subscribers. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Aiming for 500. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It'll help me out a tad bit. And it's free. You don't have to do anything. You just click a button. It helps me out a ton, though. So anyways, I love you guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.